folks, this is a brief overview of the Window Generator HDA. I'm running here the full version in Houdini, but the settings should be everywhere the same depending on your host application, which would be Maxon, Cinema 4D, 3ds Max, Maya, Unity and Unreal. Settings are pretty straightforward, so this is a brief overview, and afterwards we go into the details for every single section we will find. We have 4 tabs, so the first one would be the Window Generator, the second is the Surroundings, the third one is the Interior Blinds, and the last one are the Exterior Blinds. One of the most important things to explain is that you have always your master size slider just here on top of everything, so it just doesn't matter if you have an interior on and you play around with it. So let's open and close it, so you can always come back here and change your window. The same applies of course for the exterior size, so let's switch on an exterior blind. Let's say we take the roller blind, so we can open and close of course, and if we find out, oh, that's not the right height, we just change that later on, and you can always come back here and change the settings. So let's switch that off for a second. Also the interior blind, we go back. So the first 2 tabs are for the window generating itself, so you can have double wings and glazing bars on off. You can of course open and close it, but I will go into the details a little bit later. One important thing is you have the UV mapping to unwrap the UVs for texturing later, and you have a dedicated transform offset tool, and you will also find these unwrap UV and the transform window in every blind section for the exterior and interior. So let's close that thing and let's switch to the interior blind. We switch that one on, and you will see here you have unwrap UVs and the transform tool. So if we would switch that to a roller, you see you have the same settings here, and depending on the blind itself, you have some extra options sometimes for the UVs. They are dedicated for animation, but that really depends on your host application. Not everyone supports animation mode, but just to show you these transform tools, you can just further offset your blind separated from the window. You could also rotate it if you want. You find that also in the exterior blind, so let's switch on an exterior blind. We go to the other side. So that's a roller blind, and you see unwrap UVs and translate. So you're gonna find these 2 settings in every blind and every blind section. That doesn't matter if it's for the exterior or for the interior, and it doesn't matter if you have an office blind or a bamboo roller or whatsoever. You always have the UV mapping and the transform tab just down here. So just start with the window generator itself. The window generator is based on these 2 tabs, these 2 settings, the surrounding and the generator itself. It's pretty straightforward. You have sliders for the width and for the height, and that should be pretty easy to create windows in a matter of minutes instead of spending hours modeling. So let's dive right into it. So you have the window itself, it's on and off. You have the double wings, which is pretty nice. You can change the middle position. You can go from vertical to horizontal depending on your likings. And of course you have the slider for open and closing the windows. You can choose if you want to swing or tilt the windows. So tilt would be this movement right here, and very nice function is the handling, which switches automatically depending on your open or closing. As you can see here, it just switches, and the same would apply for the swing window. So that's pretty neat. Of course you can customize your window in a lot of ways. For example, you have the wing profile size, you have also the frame, and you have the distance frame wing, which is actually the distance between the joints and the wall. So that would be here. So of course you can unwrap the UVs for texturing your model later on, but I leave it usually on off till I'm ready, so it runs a little bit faster, but it's just switch it on and off. You have also some offset settings in the transform tool, so if you want to further offset your model, just type in some numbers and it goes in X, Y and Z. The same applies for the rotation. You also have glazing bars, which are these little bars here. So you can adjust the size and how many you want to have in horizontal or in the vertical direction. So that was it for the first tab. Pretty easy. So next one would be, I switched that off, the surrounding tab. You have different options for the interior and exterior surroundings. So that would be the exterior, and the handle side, of course, would be the inside. This is the zone for intern and the extern. You also have surrounding walls, and of course you can adjust the depth of the wall size for interior, and also for the exterior side of it. You can switch this one over here from a metal plate to a stone kind of thing. So you have a little nice profile ramp. Just leave it on metal for this matter. And you can also change the surrounding from plaster to brick lintels, so that in that case you get some sliders for the brick variation, the size, the height. Here you have the variation, so it gets a little bit older or used look, or it's pretty new. And so I leave that on the plaster. What else can you do? You can have a railing in 3 different versions. So you have 2 wireframes and a glass one. You can of course adjust the height, and in the wireframe you can also the number of braces. So that's pretty straightforward. You also have a little nice feature. That's the surrounding crown. You can have a triangle shape, or you can have a round shape. You know, whatever you like. That's just a little neat feature about any other setting, but it's of course adjust to your slider work. It's all procedural, so you can come back later, switch it on, switch it off. Yeah, that was it for the window generator. As you could see, this is pretty straightforward work to generate beautiful windows in just a matter of minutes. Here we are in the exterior venetian blind settings, and again the settings are pretty much straightforward. You have base settings, you have detailed settings, and you can switch the UVs on and off, and you have an offset transform tab. So we start with the width and height adjustment, so you can have it bigger and smaller, or depending on what your main window size is to adjust it. The base settings, you can change the size of the box. You can also change the blade width, so they get a little bit smaller or bigger. You can of course open and close the venetian blinds, and you can change the rotation of the blades. In the details tab, you can adjust the amount of pull strings, so they are limited to 5 at the moment, which should be sufficient. If you have a blade thickness, you can change the curve of the blade, so you have it a little bit more bent. And here you have the blade orientation randomness, which adds a little bit more realistic looking to your venetian blind. So if you put that to the right side, you see here they get more horizontal, and that gives a nice realistic looking to your blind. So maybe that's a little bit too much, but a little bit would be just fine. The step ladder, these are these pull strings, so you can have them. You have the subdivision, so they get nice and round. You can change the radius, make them a little bit bigger, so you can play around with these settings to make it even more realistic. And you have of course the switch for the UVs and the offset tab. That would be it for the venetian blinds. Here we are in the roller blind settings, which is part of the exterior blinds. The settings are pretty straightforward. You still have the slider for your height and your width of your main window. You have adjustment sliders, so you can varying the height and the width just of the roller, not of the window itself. And you can adjust the blade size to see that here, open and close of course. So you have bigger ones or smaller ones. You can change the bend, which makes them convex or concave. So they bend to the inner side or the outer side. So pretty easy. You can also adjust the size of this box over here. So you can of course adjust the size, and you can choose between a round box or a square box. You can even switch it off if you want. Of course, you have the unwrap UVs for the UV mapping, and you also have the offset slider again, so you can put it further away, get it closer, or even to the side. You can rotate it in X, Y, and Z. That's it for the roller blind. Here we are in the Marquis Led HDA, and its settings you have, as always, slider for the width and the height to match your window size. Here you have domain settings for the Marquis Led, settings for the UVs and the front fabric, and of course further down some transform and offset settings. So in the main settings you have the open and close. You can adjust the length of the arms. You can also switch the arms off or on if you want, and you have a slider for the slope, which closes and opens the Marquis Led as well. And so that's pretty easy to play with. Here you have the box. You can adjust its sides, and you have rail mounts, which are these little things. You can switch these off if you want, or switch them on and attach the Marquis Led to your wall or to your window, whatever you need to do with it. Here you have the settings. These ones are a bit special. We will make a separate video for the animation of the UVs, but if you just want to have the UV mapping, you have this switch on, and that should work just fine. You have a front fabric, and you can have that off if you want, or on, and you can adjust the height of the tissue, the amplitude, the frequency to have even more of these little curves around here, and the subdivision. And yeah, to have it really nice, round and banded, you will have to have a lot of subdivision to make that work. And here you have the transform settings, so you can move the Marquis Led and X, Y, and Z and put it there where you need it to. You can even rotate it and also have another offset scale to make it fit perfectly to your wall or to your window. So that was it for the Marquis Led. Here we are in the basket awning and exterior blind and its settings. So you have the adjustment sliders, the main settings, settings for the front fabric, the poly count, UV settings, and offset tab. So settings are pretty straightforward. To match your awning to your window, you have slider for the adjustment, for the height, for the width. The main settings, you can have a fast preview switch, so that would reduce poly count and makes the working a little bit faster and easier. But you can also do that later or to your likings. With the poly count settings, you can reduce the subdivisions of the polys. So here we go, we can make that really big. You can change the bevel, make it nice and round or a little bit more square. The elements tab, you have more of these wing frames. You have the band bag, and also for the front, so there you can play around with and make it pretty neat. And there's a little nice feature which is called nails. So you have little nails or button kind of things on your elements, which is pretty nice. The front fabric, you can switch it off, switch it, and switch it on. And you have even more settings, so you can change the frequency to have more curves or less, the amplitude to have it more height or not, the fringe height you can adjust, and this extra thing for a scale. So we leave that off for a second, or we can leave that on. And here you have the settings for the poly count. You can activate it, and you can decrease or increase the amount of polys you're gonna have to make it even more smooth and nice, or depending on the distance of your view. And yeah, you might need more or less polys. And further down you have settings for the UV. There are a couple of more settings for the UV layout and scale islands to match their surface area. Here we are in the Bamboo Roller HDA, which has a lot of nice features to make a really nice bamboo roller. And here we have the settings for the width and height adjustment, the main settings, and some detail settings, and also settings for the handling. And further down the road you have the UV mapping and the offset transform. So let's run through these settings. Width and height adjustment, of course, to match your bamboo roller to your window size or wherever you want to put it. And you have a slider for the open and closing. And you have detailed options for the for the rolling here itself, so you can adjust the amount of rotation, the capture length and direction, and you can adjust the thickness of the bamboo sticks itself, and you have a slider for the overshoot. And here, just to see how that works, give it a little bit more realistic looking. If you have the small and you have a little bit of overshoot, so they are not that accurate straight line, so that makes it really nice. And yeah, slider for the direction to make it even more realistic, and you have this lower band slider, which is also a pretty nice feature. So just have a look here for the lower band. So you know, if it's got a bit older, it will bend to the downside. Here you have these pull strings. You can have more or less, and you can also put them inside or outside. That really depends on your liking, but probably the realistic one would be the inside. And down here you have settings for the handling, so you can have it on or you can have it off. And here you can adjust the side where it is, and you can have the position, you know, move it around left and right. And here you have for the string collision, so an extra slider just for the little offset, so you can have it further away, or you know, just to make it match perfectly. You probably won't need that setting in most of the cases, but it's there if you need it. So down here you have the UV settings, so switch that on to texture it perfectly later on. And you have the transform tab to move it in X, Y, and Z, or rotate it, whatever you want to do with it later on. So that was it for the bamboo blind. Here we have the office blind HDA, part of the interior blinds and its settings. So a little overview: you have settings for adjustment, you have the main settings, settings for the handling, for geometry details, and further down the road you have advanced settings, settings for the UV mapping, and a transform tool. But first things first, we start with the height, and with the adjustment you can just match it to your window. This button is pretty neat because it's a fast preview mode, so that reduces the poly count, so the adjustments for everything is a little bit quicker, but of course you can just switch it off and you have every little detail here, so I leave it on for a second. You have the settings for the rotation of the blades, so that would be here. You can, you know, open and close it, you can open and close, so that means you put it, you know, from left to right, right to left. That's in construction mode. You also have an animation mode if you want to have the thing animated, but that really depends on your host application running the Houdini engine. For example, Unreal doesn't support keyframes at the moment, but that will be you know, solved soon, I guess. So be careful with that, or read the instruction for your host application. So I just leave that in construction mode. So here you have settings for the handling. You can have that on and off the handling, and so it's here because I cannot see the handling right now, but it's because I'm in fast preview mode. So I have to switch that off because that's a lot of geometry for the fast preview mode, you know, just don't need it. So handling on and off, and you can also, you know, put it to the right side, so it's over here, or we leave it on the left side. You can choose between string and chain or string and chain. So just to show you that would be a chain. And here we have a string, so it's just a little string, and you can also have string and change, so whatever you want to achieve you can choose from. And you have a couple of more settings for the height, so you can move it up and down, the spheres amount, how many spheres are on that string or chain, the subdivision of the sphere. If you are further away you won't probably need too much subdivision, but if you do a close-up you will have that increase, because then they look really nice and round. So I just increase the subdivision. You can see that here now they have a lot of subdivision. I get nice and round. So we have more settings for the geometry details. So you have a low poly rail, which is this one. So if you switch that on, that's, you know, so this shape gets more simple and have less polygons, so all things are a little bit quicker. You have the lower string, which is this one right here. so you can switch that off if you don't need it. You can have it on. You can switch the spheres on and off if you don't need them. And here again, you have slider for the subdivisions to have more or less codies on these spheres. The Abort Settings, that's the second one. That means that's the banding of this lower string. And so if I move the slider here, you have it straight, or you can have it really nice and round, and there's also a little difference slider. So play around with it, have a lot of fun. That's almost it. So if you want to check it later on, you have to switch the view mapping on, and this one is for the movement and X, Y, and Z, and also for the rotation. So I think that was it for the office blind. Here we have the Roller Hda, part of the interior blinds, and its settings. They're pretty easy, they're not too many, so you can again adjust the width and the height of your roller. You can of course open and close it. You can have the radius changed, so that would be over here, and here you can change that side of that box. And you have settings for the handling, so you can switch it off or you can switch it on. You can choose between a chain or a string, which it's in the center, and yeah, you can of course adjust the height. That's it. So if you have the chain, you can also put it to the right side, it's over here, or to the left side, and here you can also adjust the height of it, and even the subdivision of this little spheres over here. So if you have a really close-up rendering, you can increase that subdivision to make them really nice and round. But if you are far away, you're probably good to go with a lower amount of polygons. Here you have the switch for the UV mapping on and off, and to stick the UVs for the animation. That would be a separate video where we go in detail what you can do with animations and what you can't do, and where are the limitations for some engines running depending on your host application. And of course you have the transform tab. You can move it, or you can have an offset for X, Y, and Z, and also the rotation. So that was it for the Roller Hda. Here we are in the interior Venetian blind HDA and its settings, and you have slider for the width and the height adjustment just to make it match to your window. Here you have the main settings, the detailed settings, settings for the handling, which is this little thing over here. So we have a quick run through. So what's important: open and close, and the blade rotation to either side. You have the details, so you can change the width, the amount of pull strings, which would be these things over here. You have blade thickness, the blade curve, you have blade randomness, which is beautiful. You just see it here, makes it a bit more realistic. So that would be pretty straight, like perfect. And this one would be a little bit more used, like you would have used it for a couple of times, and so they are not really accurate and horizontal. You have settings for the step ladder. This is the little one over here. So you can have the radius, make this one big and small. You have subdivisions to make it nice and round or more zigzaggy. You have a couple of more settings. Just play around with it, have a lot of fun. One more thing would be the handle. Just here you have more settings, so you can switch that on and off, of course. You can choose between a string or a chain. So let's go a bit closer. That would be the chain with some spheres, or that would be the string that handles. And you can adjust the height, so put it wherever you need to. You can also change the side where it should be attached, so that would be the right side over here, or the left side. And if you have chosen the chain, you can even adjust the subdivision of the spheres, so a little bit close. If you go here, you can see, so they get really nice and round. So if you have to have close-ups, you will probably increase the subdivision, but if that's far away, you can live with a smaller amount of subdivisions for these spheres, because they're not really in the view, and they're just increasing your poly count of the whole scene. Further down, you have settings for UV mapping for texturing later on, and a dedicated offset transform to move it around in X, Y, and Z, or you can even change the rotation. Here we have the Japanese blind HDA and its settings. There are not too many, so it's quite easy to get along with that. Here you can adjust the width and the height just to match the window perfectly, and you adjust the size of your own Japanese blinds or the single blades. You can adjust the number, you can have more, and of course every one for itself. You can adjust the position, move it around, open it and close it wherever you like. You have a switch for the UVs for the texturing, and you have the transform offset tool, so you can move it at X, Y, and Z, and also rotate it at X, Y, and Z. So that was it for the Japanese blind. Fairly easy, but it's a pretty nice feature for the Window Generator HDA. Here we have the plissé or the pleated blind HDA, which is an interior blind, and the settings are quite easy. There are not too many, so that makes it easy to adjust everything. So here you have a slider for the width and for the height to fit it to your window, and obviously you can open and close it, and like a pleated blind you can also have it open or close from the top, so then you can just have it in a couple of settings. You have a perfect match to your window. You can even change the depth of the pleated blind, so here from the side you better see that, you can see it better. And yeah, you have also switch box for the UV, so for texturing later on we will switch that on. And you have a transform tab to move it at X, Y, and Z, and of course the rotation at X, Y, and Z. So that was it for the pleated blind. Have a lot of fun playing around with it.